G'day, it's fugitive Australian journalist Shane Dowling from the website Kangaroo Court of Australia. Now, Justice Stephen Reres from the Federal Court of Australia just handed down a judgment in relation to awarding damages to former New South Wales Deputy Premier John Barilaro. He's awarded him $715,000. Now, and that's in relation to the defamation case against Friendly Jordies and Google. Now, that is absolutely mind-blowing because Justice Reres says in his judgment, or it's been reported, he says in judgment, that Friendly Jordies' YouTube videos, two of them, led to John Barilaro prematurely ending his political career. Now that is just total and utter bullshit. It's a total lie. John Barilaro knows it, and so would Justice Stephen Reres. I know Reres, I've come across him before, and I'll discuss that in a minute. But $715,000. Now, unfortunately, the allegations that Friendly Jordies made against John Barilaro were never tested in court. I think Friendly Jordies was sucker punched to a degree. John Barilaro sued Friendly Jordies and Google, but he settled with Friendly Jordies. Friendly Jordies paid him $100,000 and had to edit 2 videos, and that's pretty well lit. The video stayed online. Now, what Friendly Jordies was thinking at the time, or would have been thinking, is that the lawsuit against Google was still afoot and John Barilaro continued to sue them. And apparently Google told Friendly Jordies, hey, we're going to defend this. And they were going to call Jordan Shanks, who is Friendly Jordies, they were going to call him as a witness. So Friendly Jordies would have been thinking, why pay 2 sets of lawyers to defend one action, in effect? So they've settled, and they'd raised $1 million. And so they settled for $100,000. But then for some reason, and I think someone has called in a favour from Google myself, but for some reason Google in effect said, no, we're not going to defend it. And they made an admission that the videos were defamatory. So how do they go from being, hey, we're going to defend it, to, oh no, they are defamatory and we'll just wear whatever hit we get, in effect? I think someone's called in a favour from Google. Google, a political player nowadays. They're forced by the federal government to pay Australian media companies money for their articles, etc. Now, and I think someone's lent on Google and said, hey, don't run this. It'll be embarrassing, not only for John Barilaro, but once one falls, one domino falls, the rest fall as well. So there'd be people in power who wouldn't want John Barilaro's corruption exposed. One person, for instance, is Angus Taylor, and we'll get to that in a minute as well. Now, so John Barilaro has been awarded $715,000, and Stephen Reres has referred Jordan Shanks and Google to the registrar for potential contempt proceedings because he did a couple of videos critical of the lawyers and the barrister. During the course of that defamation case, Friendly Jordies did the videos. Who's the barrister? Well, Australia's most corrupt barrister, Sue Chrysanthony. How do we know she's Australia's most corrupt barrister? Because she had to be restrained by the court not to represent Christian Porter. All the evidence was laid out in front of her. She was sent all the evidence, Sue Chrysanthony, and she said, no, I'm going to still represent him, stuff you. So they had to take legal action, and the judge forced her to stand aside, had to issue a restraining order. That's how corrupt and rotten to the core she is. Now, so for Friendly Jordies to get charged for contempt for calling her corrupt, you've got to be kidding. I must acknowledge that that judgment against Sue Chrysanthony was under appeal. She didn't appeal it, but Christian Porter did. He didn't want to pay the costs. So who knows, the court might decide she's not that corrupt at all. But if they do that, all they're doing is admitting the court's corrupt. But that's another story. Now, let's have a look at, quickly on old Stephen Reres before we move on. I wrote a book in 2009. Old Steve has got his own chapter. Love Letters from the Bar Table. Chapter 5, Stephen Reres. You can read up about his corruption from 2009. He's rotten to the core. There was a recent judgment, defamation, I think it's Chow Chuk, Chinese businessman, sued the Sydney Morning Herald and maybe others for defamation. And they tried to file further evidence, but Stephen Reres wouldn't allow them. So he found against the Sydney Morning Herald, I don't know, 300,000-400,000, whatever it was. And a couple of days later in Parliament, Federal Parliament, they read out the evidence that Chow Chuck had been named in a court over in the US as being corrupt, or a Chinese government henchman, or words to that effect. So the thing about Stephen Reres, he's playing the public for fools. John Barilaro did not resign because of those videos by Friendly Jordies. Had nothing to do with it, except maybe the fact that Friendly Jordies was shining a light on his corruption. Now, the reason John Barilaro resigned, and I wrote an article about it last year, was because of the widespread corruption allegations being written in other media, old media. Also, he was about to have to give evidence at ICAC, and also because of his multiple affairs, which was about to be exposed, and it was about to be exposed in ICAC. Now, in March this year, it's it's been made public because David Shoebridge, a New South Wales politician, subpoenaed certain documents, and it shows that New South Wales ICAC have been investigating 2 grants that John Barilaro gave when he was a minister. One, I think, was from 2016, $107,000, very dodgy. Another one, $50,000, and it's to a company, Monaro something or other. The company name is, I can't think of it offhand. And who's linked to that company? None other than Angus Taylor, most corrupt politician in Australian federal politics. So John Barilaro has been given grants to his good mate Angus Taylor, and I think it's a total of something like $800,000 or $900,000 in total to this company. Monaro, Monaro Irrigation or something like that. And I'll have the full name in the article I write in relation to this video. Now, so the point is, that's only come to light now in March this year because of the David Shoebridge subpoenaing those documents, which he can do as a politician. Now, if they came to light now, almost guaranteed that John Barilaro would have known last year, and quite possibly early last year, that ICAC were investigating, because they started asking questions, and they would have asked John Barilaro, or at least people in his department, questions, and he would have known that's about to hit the fan. He would have known he had to give evidence against, or during the hearing in relation to Gladys Berejiklian. There's an allegation he perjured himself during those proceedings. That not an allegation, a formal complaint made to ICAC. I've got the document, I wrote an article about it, and I've got the letter from ICAC saying thank you for the information, rah rah rah. So he's under investigation from ICAC for 2 grants, which could be criminal charges coming from that. He's under investigation, or formal complaints being made in relation to him perjuring himself at ICAC. That's another potential criminal offence. There could be other issues raised by ICAC when he gave evidence, and we just don't know about it, when he gave evidence against Gladys Berejiklian last year. And then the affairs, allegedly multiple affairs he's had when he was a minister. That could blow sky high too. So they're the reasons he resigned as the New South Wales Deputy Premier, and also from Parliament itself, not because of those 2 videos from Friendly Jordies. The 2 videos from Friendly Jordies basically just highlighted his corruption and added some value to it as well. They did their own investigation, Friendly Jordies. So there's a lot more to come from this. Friendly Jordies potentially facing contempt charges, but they themselves should be instituting not contempt proceedings, criminal charges. Well, potentially they could institute criminal charges against John Barilaro for making a false complaint to the police, but they should be instituting proceedings for malicious prosecution when one of the Friendly Jordies staff was charged for stalking John Barilaro. Now, what they could sue for, if they do sue for a malicious prosecution, they could subpoena John Barilaro as a witness. So they've got a couple options there, Friendly Jordies, what they can and can't do. John Barilaro, anyone watching this and thinking, geez, he got a huge payout, $715,000, he must have been defamed. No, there's a lot more to come from that. He got away with not having to address all the evidence against him because Friendly Jordies and Google didn't produce it all in court. But he did give evidence, and that evidence is locked in now, and potentially ICAC or someone else later down the track can use that evidence against him. So there's a lot more to come from it. Now this is a statement Friendly Jordies put on Twitter at 11:15 a.m. on Monday the 6th of June 2022, obviously in relation to John Barilaro getting a payout from Google. And it says, "Well done, John, you finally scored the coin from Google, class act, and you managed to get it without ever having the truth tested in court. You claimed parliamentary privilege to prevent evidence being run against you. You withdrew your action against us so we wouldn't testify or present our evidence. Poor old Google left to carry the can. I guess they are rich enough to not care. We now know that around the same time your lawyers were drafting your concerns notice, which is a defamation notice against them, you went to the terror police and a strike force with full surveillance powers was set up against us, the very people you intended to sue. Is it just us, or does something about that smell?" End of press release. Other than that, if you're watching this video, well, first of all, I'll be publishing an article tomorrow, Tuesday, on my website, Kangaroo Court of Australia. So there'll be the article there with a lot more links to a lot further information. And make sure you share that article and share this video on YouTube and subscribe. Other than that, thank you for your time and have a good day.